Hello, we are going to begin the webinar very shortly. I'm going to waiting to see who's logging on. But we are grateful to have you all join us tonight for the first webinar. So we're going to get started in just a second. Hope everyone is able to hear me. I want to get this screen so everyone can see it. Okay, we're going to get started in about less than 10 seconds, hopefully. This is our first time, and I thank you for your patience as we go forth in this. And we're ready. If you are unable to see the screen, I'm going to do one thing, 1 second. There should be a, on the right margin, you should be able to see a question and answer column. I'm going to keep toying with my screen until you can see that, because at this point, I don't think you're able to see that particular screen. That lets me know that you're here and you are able to ask questions if need be. And I still don't think we're able to see we're not all able to see that screen. I'm thanking you in advance for your patience. What we will do is, if you have questions, you can submit the questions on your right. I'm going to try this screen share one more time because there is a presentation that I want you to be able to see. we're going to go ahead with the show, or with the webinar. If you have any questions, I'm going to go to my last slide so that you can actually see where to submit those questions. You can submit the questions to Iris at ilpministries.org, and I will answer them as we go forth in this presentation. And once again, I thank you for your patience with me as we have endeavored to complete or to do our first webinar. So you're called to write. Now what? So once again, I'm saying welcome to webinar series number 001. So you're called to write. Now what? I thank you for joining, and I pray that this will empower, enlighten, and encourage you. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God had prepared in advance for us to do." This is so important for those of us who have accepted the call to write, because this particular verse lets us know that God prepared us for this particular assignment before we even began to do the assignment. So now that we have been given the assignment to do, what is the next step? So if you will hang in there with me for the next 30 minutes, we'll walk through what some of our steps can be, what steps we can take as we go forth in this particular call. I am Iris L. Peterson. I am an educator. I have worked in the public schools of North Carolina for 18 years. I love what I do. I am an encourager. I enjoy speaking life and hope and hope to those who will lend me their ears. I blog regularly at ilpministries.org. My blog is Iris's Insights, and I just take pleasure in being able to share a message with other people who, we're seeing a message, God's message in life's little moments. I am a writer. I published my first book, My Neighbor, My Buddy, My Friend, in 2013. It is a children's book. It's illustrated by one of my coworkers. The following year, I published Iris's Insights, which is a year-long devotional with just messages of hope and encouragement, prayers, reflection questions, and those are just stories, not just stories, but those are stories, nuggets that God has given me to encourage the body of Christ. So My Neighbor, My Buddy, My Friend was in 2013. Iris's Insights was published or released in 2014. Excuse me. And then in 2015, the Lord allowed me to share testimony, a written testimony, with a mentor, Vanessa Miller, who included it in her anthology. The name of the anthology is Love, Hope, and Faith, Volume 2. And my story is A Whisper in the Night. All these are books that I have written or contributed to. The next two books, Prayer Invasion and Finally, were all books that I was able to publish. Prayer Invasion was written by the intercessors from High Level Ministries in Kenansville, North Carolina. Those are prayers, a book of prayers for any situation that you face. And S.A. Faison published, used Maddie's Seed Publishing to release her novella, Finally, and that was released earlier this year. All of these books, with the exception of My Neighbor, My Buddy, My Friend, can all be found on Amazon.com. One thing that is important for us to know is have we really been called to write? And these are 10 questions that were actually written by Mary DeMuth. She is an author who has a blog and several books. She's a Christian writer, and she lists these 10 questions on a blog post. And I thought these were worth including in what we're working on tonight. The first question is, have others told you that they have been changed or challenged by reading your words? In other words, are you good with words? Do you have a way with words? Are you able to write words of encouragement or write words that encourage, empower, make people think, make people want to make a difference in their lives? Number two, have you had an opportunity to meet with professionals in the writing industry, shared your writing with them, and have they given you positive feedback? That is something that I wouldn't say it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, but if you get that nod, then that is an indicator that you need to press forward. And if you get a nod from someone who's a professional, latch on to them. And we're living in a time where there's really no excuse for people not making that connection, because there's so many ways that you can connect with people. You don't have to see them every day. You don't have to talk to them, but you can follow their blogs. You can read their writings and just study their style. If you have a particular affinity for a certain writer, if you think you write like someone else or you appeal to that particular audience, study what they do, follow the things that they do, and the trail has already been blazed, so it's not something you have to create. But if you get that nod from a person who's established, that is an indicator that you need to continue pressing forth in that call. Handling criticism, I think, depending upon a person's personality, this may be one of those hard things to deal with, especially if you are a person who you have that personality type that you want people to like you. I think I'm speaking from experience there. But when you receive criticism, it's imperative that you learn how to deal with criticism, how to handle it, what to do next. When I was writing My Neighbor, My Buddy, My Friend, I was actually led to share the book with certain people prior to its release. One person that I shared the book with was a counselor, and I wanted her feedback from a professional standpoint, because there's an issue of sickness and death in the book. I wanted to know my audience. I wanted to know what age group would be too young to handle it. And that was the feedback that I expected to receive from this professional. However, the feedback was a little different. It was not positive feedback, and it had nothing to do with the audience. And the feedback was actually about the features of the characters. Because that was not what I asked, that particular criticism kind of shook me. But at the end of the day, I had to know that I was writing because this particular project was laid upon my heart, and I had to press forward with it in spite of the criticism that I had received, and in spite of the criticism that would come later on down the road. So that criticism prepared me for what I may face later. So you have to accept criticism with grace and then continue on to write better. Are you passionate about the writing craft? In the movie Chariots of Fire, Eric Liddell, one of the runners, and I've got writing on my mind, but one of the writers, I did it again, one of the runners in the movie Chariots of Fire made this powerful quote. He said, "I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure." Take a minute and concentrate on that particular quote. When I run, excuse me, I feel God's pleasure. This is so important because when you have a passion about something that you're doing, and you know that God has called you to do it, it's easy for you to do it with grace because you actually feel that God's hand is upon you as you are completing that particular task. I am able to identify with that because there's some things that are hard for me. There's some things that are is a chore for me. There's some things that I have to do in my daily job that I don't enjoy doing. There are times that even though I love speaking, I love talking to people, there are times when I am forced to have crucial conversations with other adults, and that's not a situation I enjoy being in. But when I'm writing, I always feel God's pleasure. Even if I'm sitting down and I don't know what I'm going to write about, but I know that I need to write, I feel a peace that I can't explain. And I know that that is his pleasure. And if you are called to write, I'm sure that you can also identify with that passion and that peace that you feel, knowing that God is pleased with what you're doing. Because as Ephesians said, he prepared us to do this in advance. Number 5, have you heard from God that this is what he wants you to do? Is this something that you know that he has instructed you to do? Is this an assignment that you feel he's giving you? Number 6, this one is interesting because a lot of times when we think about writing, we think about how many books we're going to sell, how many thousands of dollars we're going to make, how many bestsellers lists we're going to find our names upon. We're thinking of the glamour part of that. How many people are going to go on Amazon and buy our books? How many people are going to run us down and say or ask us, do we have any books with us? That's the glamorous side, and it's often colored with a pen that may not be real. So what if you have to write, or you write because that's what he's told you to do, and you don't make a penny? Would you still be willing to do it? Number 7, do you take writing seriously? Is this something that you are serious about? Even if you haven't developed a schedule and you don't have certain times that you write, when you do sit down, or even when you think about writing, you have a different attitude or a different demeanor when you think about that particular task. Then are you eager to learn as much as you can about the writing process? Did you read other people's books? Do you read books on writing? Do you read books in the genre that you are more likely to write in? Number 9, have you sought or become a mentor? This is so crucial. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast, and I'm almost positive it was Michael Hyatt. And in this particular podcast, he talked about business relationships and speaking relationships or writing relationships. If you are in a leadership position, or if you're in a business, a leadership position in a business, or if you're a writer or a speaker, he said there are three powerful relationships that everyone should have. The first relationship and this is knowing that the most important relationship is a relationship with God. He's talking about relationships with people. The first relationship you should have is with the mentor, a person who has already walked that path. And so many times we have mentors or spiritual parents who serve a purpose, and we don't recognize that we also need mentors who have already blazed the trail. So you can link up with someone who has written a book and who has built a platform. And sometimes you link up with them physically, you actually see them, you sit down in the same room with them, you talk to them. Or there may be times that that person is a distant mentor where you have to catch them virtually, or you may register to be coached by them or sign up to be part of their tribe. These are some key phrases that you'll hear in publishing or in writing circles. Tribes, those are people who ride with you or who write with you, who have that same vision. Or you may actually seek out a person who is a professional and they don't mind walking through the process with you. The second relationship that Michael Hyatt addressed was the relationship with the person who has already, or who's right there where you are. So this is a peer, a person who's going through that same process that you are going through. And then lastly, the relationship is with someone who is up and coming, someone that you are able to sow into, that you can encourage. And as you hear your mentor telling you, don't do this or do that, or these are some things that I experienced, then you are able to share that same experience with that person who is trying to get to where you are. So again, those three relationships: a mentor who has already traveled the road, a peer who's right there beside you, and then a mentee, someone that you can pour into. And then lastly, number 10, can you put your ego aside? Um, when you are a writer, you've been called a writer, you're ready to do the next or take the next step, it's important that you forget about yourself, that you're not thinking about getting accolades or getting praise. You must remain humble in this process. So those are the 10 things to like a checklist to see if you have been called to write. The next thing that we need to do um, is to think like a writer. Proverbs 19:21 says that many plans are in a man's mind, but it is the Lord's purpose for him that will stand or be carried out. Thinking like a writer, the first thing on this list should be start with prayer. So when you are getting your mind right to write, or getting your mind in order, it's important to have a prayer life, that you spend time with God to find out what it is that He wants you to do. What area that does He want you to write in? What's your niche? Who are the people that you're called to? The next thing is to become disciplined and set goals. One thing that I did when I started thinking about writing as a job, and when you think like a writer, you do see it as a job. It's something that you have to show up to every day. It may mean that you're carrying a notebook in your purse or in your pocket, or you're making use of your note app on your phones, or jotting things down in your computer. But you are writing when things come to your mind. In becoming disciplined, something that I did that was very powerful, and it helped me to stay on task, and it was the driving force as I was completing Iris's Insights, the book Iris's Insights. I actually mapped out my day starting at 5 a.m. That was the time that my feet hit the floor, to about 10 p.m., 11 o'clock in some cases when I went to bed. In most cases, it was before then. But because there was a task at hand, I had a goal to complete, I had to stay up later. And my cousin, his name is Brian, he was very responsible for pushing me on this journey. He used to say that sharks don't sleep. So we would chat and text late at night because we were both being accountable to each other, because we had somewhere that we were going. There was a task that we wanted to complete. So what I did was I jotted down every hour of the day from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I wrote down everything that I did, from getting up, preparing to work, preparing to go to work, driving to work, my 8 hours on the job, my 30-minute commute back home, homework time, cooking dinner. All of those things were mapped out. And then I was able to look to see, were there any places on during the day that I wasn't doing anything? Or were there times in the day that I could kind of condense? Instead of spending an hour watching TV, could I cut that out to make time for my other job, which was writing? So you have to, and what I ended up doing was from about 9 o'clock, usually about 9:15 after my children went to bed, from 9:15 to 10:30 or 11 o'clock, that was my writing time. I didn't talk on the phone. I was not on Facebook. I was writing because that was the time that I had carved out. That was when I made an appointment with me to get that job done. I would like to say that I've been consistent in that. I haven't, just because of life's demands, but I'm shifting back to that. because I was able to get so much accomplished, and even finding a spot that works for you. It may be a office. You may have an office. You may have a little corner in your home that is just a private area where you can sit down and work and not be disturbed. So where do you work during that time that you carved out to be disciplined and to write? You establish priorities. By the end of the year, I want to be able to do this, 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 and this. And then you have an accountability partner that knows what you're supposed to do, and you can share with him or her what you have accomplished. With my accountability partner, we are, and it's actually my mentee. We have a certain number of words that we aim to write each week. It's actually 5,000 words. So on Fridays, I look to get a text from her saying, I met my goal. I wrote 5,000 words today or this week. Or she may send a text during the week that I hit 250 words a day and I've got to do this many tomorrow. So being accountable is so important. And you have to be able to follow through with the person that you're accountable to. We want to talk about investing in yourself. That is something that you can do after accepting the call. It's interesting to see the number of people who would be willing to go out and purchase clothes or certain bags or a certain watch or a tech gadget. But if they were to take that same amount of money they spent on that bag or those shoes and invested in their writing goals, they might second guess it. So it's important to do things that will help you grow, and sometimes the investment may be your time, sometimes it may be your finances. One thing that you can do to invest in yourself would be attending webinars, as some of you are doing now. There are all kinds of webinars for writing. You can seek those out or Google and come up with different webinars that may appeal to you. Attending conferences and being a part of critique groups. Conferences give you an opportunity to network with other people. You have an opportunity to share your writing. In some cases, you may attend a conference where publishers are present and they give you an opportunity to meet with them and pitch your book. Those things are always opportunities for growth. Sisters with Stories is a critique group or a group of encouragers. We were getting together in a local restaurant in Greensboro. Then we shifted to virtual meetings where we just check in with one another, shoot encouraging words to each other. It may be that you have a message that you would like that person to read and give you feedback. So those groups are very important. Compel and Hope Writers are two online support groups. They are membership sites or membership groups where you actually pay a monthly fee to be a part of a network of other writers. So there are several ways that you can connect with other people. We're going to close out today. We have just a few more minutes. I want to close out with each webinar with sharing places that you can submit your work. A lot of times we think about writing and the first thing we think is, I need to write a book. And oftentimes that may be a goal further down the line, but you may end up writing articles and submitting articles prior to having that book published. So I want to share with you a place that is looking for article submissions, and most of us are very familiar with this particular book. And there are so many different editions of this book that have been published, and they published several throughout the year, and it's the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. So there are several stories that you can submit, or different categories for submission. You can actually go online to chickensoup.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page. It's in blue, the footer of the page. you will see submit your story. Click on submit your story, and it will actually give you the submission guidelines. So I pulled out 6 different editions that will be coming up in the next year or so, um, and that they're calling for submissions now. So the Joy of Christmas, Chicken Soup for the Soul, the Christmas edition will be released in 2016, and they are actually looking for stories of all things holiday, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, even New Year's stories. You can submit those by April 30th, and those will be published in the holiday or the Christmas edition for 2016, The Joy of Christmas. And a blurb from the website says, everyone has special memories and stories to tell about the Christmas season, from inspirational and joyous to heartwarming and humorous. We want to hear about your special Christmas memories and traditions, from the decorations and the food to the music and the parties, the shopping and the gift wrapping. How do you celebrate the special spirit of the season? How do you deal with the stress of getting it all done? What traditions have you carried out on from when you were a child? Please share your special stories about the holiday season with us. That deadline is April 30th. Stories about teachers and teaching. That particular deadline is June 30th, along with blended families. Stories about teachers and teaching. That's calling for people to share why they went into the teaching profession. Tell about the teachers who changed your life. If you're not a teacher, if you are a teacher, tell us about the kids who changed your life and who motivated you to keep on teaching. Blended families. This particular story, chicken soup story, a chicken soup book. As for how did you make it work? Are you part of a blended family? Are you enjoying stepchildren or step siblings? What is the joy of blending 2 families after a second marriage? Have there been challenges? What stories can you tell about your own blended families, and how did you make it work? What advice are you able to give to other blended families? The next one is college student stories. That submission deadline is July 31st, 2016. This particular edition calls for any stories that deal with how you dealt with your roommate. How did you overcome fear and try new things? Did you have any internships? Did you study abroad? How did you figure out what came next for you after graduation? So those are the stories that, these are the Campus Chronicles. That will be the Chicken Soup for the Soul Campus Chronicles. Parent to Parent is also a July 31st deadline. And this is just saying parenting can be the hardest job and the most rewarding job that a person can have. This particular edition calls for, it's actually dubbing the book as a kind of support group for parents, whether you're trying to solve a problem or figure out how to teach good values in your children. These stories will show you the way other parents dealt with issues and what worked. And then lastly, The Best Mom Ever. This one, of course, will be published in 2017 because it has a submission deadline of September 30th, 2016. But this just tells, is your mom the best mom ever? How about your stepmother, your grandmother, or mother-in-law? We're looking for stories about moms of all ages, from young mothers to great grandmothers and everything in between. This is looking for stories of special moments, the laughter, the tears, the support, and the encouragement. So there's so many different things that you can do to get your words out there. And this would be a great way to start. There are 6 different categories: Christmas, teachers and teaching, blended families, college student stories, parent to parent, best mom ever. There's also one for dreams. If God has given you a dream or spoken to you in a dream, giving you a message, that's a story that you can share. I didn't actually include that because that deadline is actually March 31st. But there's so many different things, and if you just go to Chicken Soup for the Soul, there are probably 8 other topics that I didn't include. Now that they're calling for submissions between now, March 30th, and the latest one is, I think the September one is the latest date for submission. So there's several opportunities to publish or to submit for Chicken Soup for the Soul. Lastly, if you have any questions, I will endeavor to answer those. We did run over a little bit because of getting started. This was the first time, so we're trying to work some things out. If you have any questions, you can send me an email at iris@ilpministries.org, and I will respond to your email as soon as possible. I will hang on for another 30 minutes. You can hop over to my Facebook page, Iris's Insights, and we can continue this conversation. I thank you so much for participating in the webinar. It is my prayer that something was said that encouraged you, that make you know that there are next steps for you to take now that you know that you're called to write. Just get out there, do it. Know that there are people who are supporting you, cheering you on, and there is support in this corner of the web. May God continue to bless you. Again, thank you for participating in the webinar. You're called to write. Now go forth and do great things. Any questions? I'm hopping back over here. I see we have a couple of viewers. If you have any questions, you can submit those on the sidebar. Okay. Thank you for joining. Okay, goodbye.